I wanted to hit everybody with the haze. How's it going? Hey. My name's Ryan Tamori. Welcome to the Pit Press Live. Um, Busy show today, even in the midst of the dog days of summer. We want to talk. I know I'm doing the squirrel with the squirrel on the terrible transition, but another kind of somber episode, at least to start with another passing in Lobo Land. We'll get to that. Obviously, probably those watching, you heard about Greg Brown. We'll touch on Lobo women's basketball. We're going to talk about the expansion later on. Jacob Neff is going to join us about the expansion of the possibility of the NCAA tournament. I, for one, am against it. We'll hit on the Lakers, the NBA Finals. Mentioned something about going to Vegas for the Mountain West Conference Football Media Days. We have exciting news there. So, again, my name is Ryan Tamori. I'm the host here on the Pit Press Live. Want to thank our sponsors, Abrazo Home, Hydro Bar, Affordable Solar, Turquoise Desert Tap Room. I can never do this show alone. Rick Thompson, Richard, he's in Hawaii and living it up and enjoying it. So he won't be able to join us tonight. Eric, again, Moulton with his new baby. But I'm always happy to be joined by a Lobo fan since 1970, a Laker fan since 1972. And when's the Dallas Cowboy fandom, Ed?
Yeah, 70.
70, okay. 70. So Lobo fan since 1970, Dallas Cowboy fan since 1970, Laker fan since 1972. And Jerry West isn't an unhinged, crazy person. His name is Mr. Ed Nunez, and he's the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs. Ed, how you doing?
Doing great, Ryan. You know, I know Rick's in Hawaii, but I wanted to thank him for the notes that he always provides on the show. He's does a lot of research and provides us a lot of great content. So we definitely miss him on the show for sure. And I know Jacob will join us later. And my son almost did. He just couldn't. But we miss Eric, but Eric's working very hard behind the scenes. So
we're going to start off with the passing of Greg Brown, 5'7" point guard, who led Albuquerque High to a state title. He played for UNM in the early 90s. He led the Lobos to a 1994 WAC championship. He unfortunately died last Friday morning in a car crash near Albuquerque. His daughter turned to the Albuquerque Journal. He was 51. That was a little bit too young for that. So, Ed, I will get your reflections in a second, but I want to bring in our guest. He is a Lobo who played from 1982 to 1985. He played in 61 games. He averaged 12.2 points, 6.2 rebounds a game. His name is Mr. George Scott. George, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
I wish we will get your thoughts on a couple other things. I wish it was a little bit of a different topic to start off with. I know you didn't play with Greg Brown, but you're a UNM alumni. And it's a very simple softball question. We've had a little bit of tragedy within the UNM men's basketball community, but when you heard the passing of Greg Brown, an untimely death, you know, your first thoughts?
Well, I'm going to tell you guys how I found out. Hunter Green texted me Friday morning. Now, 99% of Hunter and myself's communications are via text message. I think the last time Hunter called me was to tell me that Kelvin Scarborough died. So when I saw him calling me first thing Friday morning, I thought, this is not good. Who died now? So I was on a Zoom call at work, so I couldn't take the call. So when my meeting ended, I called Hunter back, and he dropped that bombshell on me, and I am still devastated. I am just shocked by that because I literally spoke to Greg the week prior. He and I spent about 12 or 15 minutes on the phone. I was sitting on my couch here at the house, and we're just talking about Lobo basketball, football, just whatever, you know, our kids. And I am just devastated. I still cannot believe I'll never talk to him again. I'll never see him again.
That's pretty rough. I never try to. I really don't try to make this about myself. That's kind of how I learned. I was 16, how I learned how my dad passed away. So it's when you hear those stories, I don't know. It doesn't get any easier. And I'm going to toss it to you and what kind of questions, because you know more than I do about Greg Brown and what kind of player he was. And we were talking off the record. I'm just going to toss it to you real quick.
George, my wife works with somebody that lives in Hobbs, so they got the word from Tina, from Greg's ex-wife, and I think I had the same reaction as you did. I was stunned, and I didn't lost for words. When we did our Lobo Legends series, we were interviewing Johnny Brown, and Greg had called me right when we were interviewing Johnny, and I called him back, and this is a couple months ago. He just called to say, "Hey, what's up?" He called to say, "I'm in Atlanta." We had wanted to get him on. We just, we'd missed some signals here and there. But I think, George, when you talk to Greg, he's a deep thinking brother about basketball. He would go, like Petey Gibson. If you talk to Greg about basketball, Greg is going to bring up a lot of different plays, how a player plays, how he thought, how he played, which we know one of the greatest Lobo point guards maybe a shooting guard. But if you think about it, when he was here and you saw him play, and you played in some games with him, so did I. We played a lot of pickup ball with him, and he was that good. He was, people ask, that didn't see him, was he that good? He was. They don't give the Naismith Player of the Year under 5'7". They don't give that award away. So that was my reaction, George. And George, when you mentioned talking to him and your recollections of him as a player here, what do you remember the most?
Well, off the top of my head, pound for pound, to use a boxing term, the greatest Lobo basketball player ever. I was inducted into the UNM Hall of Fame a couple years ago, and I made it a point to mention that there's been a lot of great Lobos come through Albuquerque, a lot of great ones. Michael Cooper, Kenny, Charles, Clayton, Luke. I can go on and on, but Greg was always my favorite Lobo because, he was listed at 5'8", but he wasn't 5'8". Yeah. He might have been 5'6" on a good day, but he still won the Mountain West Conference. The Western Athletic Conference Player of the Year. He destroyed the conference his senior year. No one could lay a glove on him, to use another boxing term. I was a huge fan of his, and I must have told him 100 times that he was my personal favorite Lobo. And he would blush, and he would get all embarrassed because he was such a grounded, humble guy. It made him uncomfortable when I told him, "Dude, you are the greatest ever, pound for pound." And it just made him squirm, made him uncomfortable, but he was the guy. Think about this. Imagine Greg Brown's skill set if he was 6'5", about 210, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you know what? That would have been a lethal weapon. He was as a lethal weapon at the size he was. And it's ironic because his dad was 6'1". His dad,
yes.
His dad, Greg, was his late dad, Greg, had some size. But Greg, at that size, made the most of it. And, George, I got to tell you this. I known you for a long time. You're a very good friend. When you say that about the greatest pound for pound, I know you're careful about that because Kelvin Scarborough was a good friend of yours. Phil Smith's a good friend of yours. Daryl McGee, they're all good friends of yours. So when
Absolutely.
You say that, yeah, when you say that, Hunter Green is one of your best friends. You don't say those. You don't say that lightly. That's to say that. And you mentioned Luke and Clayton and Spider and Kenny. The Mel Daniels, right? The Ira Harge, the Ira Harges, the Marvin Automatic Johnsons, the Rob Robbins that came through here. Great players. So when you say that that freezes everybody because it's like you look back on it, and when you mention in the WAC conference that year, he played with Kahari Jackson, with Ike Williams, Louis Lamar, Notch Neves. They made it. They won the WAC tournament and played George Mason. I believe they lost in the first round to George Mason or George Washington, one of them. But you
Right.
think about, okay, I remember distinctly when they played BYU, the Reed brothers. He went, he destroyed them dudes, man. And those guys were good players. They were good players.
Yes.
But
Yes.
Greg, and I say these things with admiration, because if Greg, had a little chip, he had a chip on his shoulder every single time he got out there. He did. So those guys in particular, he destroyed. I remember step back, 30 feet, boom, and then drive to the basket, get in the lane, dish it off. He had so many ways to score. Dropped 42 against UTEP in the pit, I believe. So,
Yep.
you're George, you're right. We're lucky to see him play. And again, you saying that he was the best player as far as you're concerned, pound for pound, I think speaks volumes.
I mean, exactly. Okay. Now, and then think about this. If Marvin Johnson, Mel Daniels, Ira Hart, Hunter Green, if those guys were 5'8", would they be the players that they were? I rest my case.
Yeah. And, of course, no knock to any of those guys. Isaiah used to say that. Isaiah Thomas would say that about Jordan and Magic. Well, I'm 6'1", and they're 6'6" and 6'9", and I get it. The little man, Isaiah,
Right.
one of the greatest little guys in the game. But Greg and George, going back to high school at Albuquerque High, I don't know if you saw him play there too. And
Yes.
They lost in '89 to La Cueva. Russell Henry from La Cueva hit a last-second shot. But that 90 team, they came back and got revenge. And Greg led that marvelous Bulldog squad with Edward Edmond, with Terrence Cunningham, Lakes, Brent Brucker, Jeff Cedillo, Danny Castellano, Terrence Cunningham. That was a loaded team. And Greg, I remember after the game, Greg said, Coach Holzman is like a second father to me. And, he was real close to his own dad, Greg. And for him to say that, he really meant that. So he got mentored coming into college by one of the greatest high school coaches in the state of New Mexico.
He did. Absolutely. And speaking of which, Coach Holzman just turned 94 years old. I'm part of a lunch group. It's called the Old Jocks Club. It's a bunch of former Lobo athletes, football, basketball, baseball, and believe it or not, I'm the youngest of the group. They call me Junior. So I see Coach Holzman about once a month, and his body's kind of failing him. He walks with the walker, but his mind is still sharp. He'll still tell you about a game back in 1979 or 1984 when they played whoever. His mind is still sharp, but Coach Holzman was a great mentor and spiritual leader to Greg. So absolutely, no doubt about it.
It's he played for in college here. He played for Coach Bliss, and that team had a lot of excitement around them. We mentioned some of the Ike Williams and Kahari Jackson. I remember when Ike Williams came in from Texas, I believe maybe from Dallas, and Kahari. I talked to him. From Dallas. I talked to Kahari last week, and he's going to try to join us next week. But that Lobo team was very exciting. Notch Neves could knock down the three. Louis Lamar battled. I know you and Louis had some games together, battling each other. Louis was a heck of a hustler, and so I think. But when people remember that team, and again, there's some fine ball players on it. Who do they remember the most? You just mentioned it, and there's reasons why. What was it that excited you so much about seeing Greg in the pit and the other places too? And think about this too, George, real quick before you get to that point. Out of high school, he had to go to New Mexico Junior College where he averaged 18 points, and then the Lobos pick him up for 2 years. So he went to, so again, he's coming in here with something to prove. But what was it about his game as a Lobo? The long jumpers, the getting into the lane, the defense of the steals. What was it about his game that impressed you so much as a Lobo?
I think it was his heart. It was his heart. He was 5'7", and to use a horse racing analogy, I'm kind of all over the board tonight, but as you guys may know, the greatest horse racing champion of all time, Secretariat, right? I read, with me being from Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Kentucky Derby, that Secretariat, when they did a necropsy on him, which is an animal autopsy, they said that Secretariat had the heart that was twice as big as the heart of a normal horse. So my point is, Greg being 5'7", he just had an unbelievably big heart, which is how and why he was able to compete as well as he did at the highest levels in high school, junior college, and in Division I college for UNM. The guy had the heart of a champion. He refused to back down. He would tell me that he knew he was small, so he really got into weight training. And he told me that he could bench, I think he told me, 245, 250, because he was conscious that guys were going to try to post him up, take him down low, and have their way with him. So he decided he was going to get stronger so guys couldn't do that to him. So again, he was just very cerebral, always thinking ahead, trying to figure out what he could do to prevent guys from taking advantage of him, of his slight stature.
He played for the New Mexico Slam. So I was the director at Cesar Chavez Community Center, and he would come in and work in the weight room. And he got, like you said, he put on a lot of size. He really did. And I'll tell you, I saw guys try to post him up, bigger guys that you would think, hey, man, they're going to – and he just had a way of riding you out of there, getting in front of you. He was really strong. So a lot of guys thought they saw that, and they'd say, we're going to, post time, right? And that didn't work. That didn't work out well. George, I don't know if he ever told you, he almost made the Orlando Magic, man. He was very close to making that team. He told me that. I know he talked to you about that. He almost had a shot at the pros, and I think that needs to be remembered too. So he had a fantastic basketball career as a player, went on to be an assistant coach at West Mesa, head coach at Albuquerque High, coached the Granger Hurricanes. I've got two quick stories to tell about that. We're going to let you go here in a few minutes, George. I know you've got some dinner to get to, but he was telling me he was coaching the Granger Hurricanes, and they played the Lamar Odoms. And he said the Granger Hurricanes couldn't even get the ball up to the floor against the Lamar Odoms, man. Steal, dunk. And just the way he talked about it. You know how Greg was. Greg can describe every single play. I got to tell you another quick story. He was saying that when he played for the Lobos, they went to play Utah, and Majerus had scouted every single play that they did. They couldn't run a thing. And remember, Bliss, as an X and O coach, wasn't a joke. He had coached under Bobby Knight. It wasn't as if he didn't know X's and O's. The other part of his coaching, a lot of people didn't agree with the way he, he came down heavy-handed on some people. But when he told me that, again, when you had talks with Greg, I had a million basketball talks with him, live talks. I know you did too. So, our friend, and much respect and condolences to the family, and his daughter Amaya played at Florida State, and then she played here for New Mexico, and then it's his son Amari is in a junior college now, I believe. And, that's what he was calling to tell me, George, when he called it. He was so proud of Amari and Amaya. He was proud of his kids. And he was telling me how good Amari is. And he's a lefty, I believe. Amari's a lefty, I think. Yes. So talk a little bit about that. Did he talk about his kids too? I'm sure he did.
Yeah. First of all, I'm actually fine on time. We just ate dinner right before I logged on.
Okay, good. I want to make sure.
So I am good on time.
Oh, good. We got some other things we wanted to talk to you about. Go ahead.
Right. But no, I just want to tell you that our last conversation a week before he passed, it was about me trying to get in touch with the Lobo basketball office to see if they were interested in Amari, because he actually reached out to me about maybe a couple months before that, telling me about Amari and how he was tearing it up in Atlanta and he was putting up all these great numbers, and that he was surprised that UNM was not recruiting his son. So he asked me if I could kind of reach out to see if they had any interest. So I reached out to the basketball office and I basically passed the message along, and no one from UNM got back to me. I just heard through the grapevine that they were keeping it on the back burner or considering him. So they never really gave Greg a yes or a no answer. So when he called me a week before he passed, he was just following up on that. And I just told him what I just told you guys, and that UNM never gave me an answer. They said that, they've got his information. They're aware of him and how well he's doing. And that was basically it.
Well, you never know, maybe they are keeping it on the back burner, and, now that, and hopefully they're recruiting him before Greg passed away, and we'll see what happens after that. George, we appreciate you sharing your memories of, and George, I got to say one more thing before I turn it over to Ryan. George, it's unbelievable to me that Kelvin Scarborough, your very good friend, Daryl McGee, and now Greg are gone. Three of the greatest Lobo point guards in history, and way too young. All three of them way too young. When Kelvin died, I loved all three of them. Daryl was funny, man. People don't understand how funny Daryl was. Daryl would run his mouth, man, but he was a heck of a ball player, very smart. And then Kelvin, and then now Greg. It's just unbelievable to me, George, that they're all gone.
It is just absolutely shocking. Not to mention Drew Gordon, who passed away a couple of weeks ago. Andre McGee, Daryl's little brother, also died this year. Reuben Douglas died about a month ago. Yeah. And then most recently, Rob Robin's son Liam died a couple of weeks ago in a horrific drowning accident. And I'm told that Rob is just inconsolable right now. He lost his 26-year-old son. So he is just a mess right now. So it's been a very difficult spring and summer for former Lobo basketball players.
You know what? Prayers to Rob. I love Rob. Rob's a good guy, man. He's one of the best. One of the best people. Besides being one of the best Lobos, he's just a great guy. So, prayers out to him. That's a very hard loss. Ryan, did you have some questions and anything else you wanted to ask George?
Well, he kind of stole my thunder there with mentioning the other Lobos that had passed, because it's been.
I'm sorry.
No. I shouldn't have said it like that. Again, it's not trying to be insensitive. I was going to ask you about Reuben Douglas and Drew Gordon. I heard about Rob Robbins. Through my work, I ended up meeting Jimmy Taylor, which was probably like the statistics would have been like 1 in 6 billion or something like that. Jimmy Taylor played for the Lobos in the late 80s, early 90s. So I have his number, and he actually reached out to me if I had heard anything about Rob Robbins' son. And then I actually let him know about Greg Brown, and he said he had heard that. George, I want to bring you back for like another 10, 15 minutes, if that's all right, if we could just take a quick commercial break. We talked to you, I think, prior to the season, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on how the last Lobo season kind of went and what we're looking forward to heading into 2024, 2025, if that is okay with you.
Yes, that is totally fine. I fed my daughter. I've got a full tummy, so my evening is free. So I'm with you guys as disposable for as long as you need me.
Perfect. We're going to bring you back. We're going to take a quick commercial break, then we'll be back with George Scott. My name's Ryan Tamori. This is the Pit Press Live, and as always, I'm joined by Ed Nunez. A little bit later, we're going to have Jacob Neff join us. We're going to talk about the possibility of the NCAA tournament expanding, and maybe we'll keep George Scott on with that just to see what he says. But we're going to take a quick commercial break because we got to pay some bills. So we'll be right back.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Welcome back to the Pit Press Live. My name is Ryan Tamori. I'm joined by Ed Nunez and former Lobo, George Scott. I don't have a background in hosting television or radio. I've been doing this for about on and off for 2 years now. I think I've gotten much better at it. Haven't mentioned the state of New Jersey, Ed, but I'm mentioning my days at the Daily Lobo. So that's one for this episode. I'm really bad at with what has happened with death. I've had a friend that has lost his father-in-law and his father within the last 2 years, and I'm so bad about going to funerals. And as I mentioned, I lost my dad at 16. And then the next year, after my dad died, after I graduated high school, my great aunt died, who was like a grandmother to me in New Jersey. There we go, New Jersey. So I felt, and I apologize to you and our listeners. I don't know. I just didn't feel like I did a good job with that, with the loss. Just not only as the UNM community has had the UNM athletic department and then UNM men's basketball alumni. I don't know why the older I've gotten, it's a little, not that I'm an old man, Ed, but it's, I don't know. It gets very difficult for me to talk about, and something that I felt like I kind of froze up. So I apologize. I did want to mention this before we move on and talk at least a little bit of basketball, and not lost within the UNM basketball community. A private celebration of life service for Greg Brown has been set for Saturday in Albuquerque from Albuquerque High from 6 to 7:30. A public service is pending when the family continues to work out the details. Meanwhile, there's been a GoFundMe page set up for the family. More than $5,100 of the requested $15,000 has been raised. The closeout date on the GoFundMe page is June 29th. Again, that's for Greg Brown. I'm pretty good about the history, Ed. I think you got to give me a little bit of credit. It's something I enjoy. There's like every so often there's one that falls through the cracks, and it's Greg Brown. And I probably owe George and Ed you an apology. I'm familiar with those. When I started to watch more Lobo athletics, I was 7 years old, 8 years old, 6, 7 years old when those teams were dominating in the early 90s. So now I am starting to show my age, but I'm familiar. I remember watching the later teams in the tournament. I remember those WAC championship games. I remember the game here against Utah in the late 90s. I look at everything, and then hearing you talk, George, about how he is, let me choose my words carefully there. He is the best Lobo according to you. But I'm looking at his stats, and Ed, I know we talked about it a little bit. I mean, they are completely off the chart. And I just wanted to go to one of the comments here, and I might let George or Ed take this one. Jimmy H. Jalen House reminded me of Greg. It's probably just me. I don't know if one of you want to talk about that. I know it's just the most recent, one of the most recent Lobos that played with us. Ed, I don't know if you feel that way or not.
Different games of, Jalen's a ball hawk on defense, gonna, steal the ball a lot. He's gonna shoot. I thought Greg was a better shooter, a volume shooter than Jalen was. Greg got in the lane a little bit more. I think, although Jalen's very athletic. Athletic-wise, they might be close, and there's a photo finish there. Not a bad comparison. I think they're a little bit different and similar in ways. I think Greg was a better shooter than Jalen was. But, Jalen's still making his case to be in the NBA, but, making the G League. George, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I think that Jalen was more of a scorer, meaning that he could shoot left-handed, right-handed, spot up, step back on the fly, versus Greg, who was a better shooter. Greg was deadly from 25, 30 feet out. We all remember that game against UTEP when he dropped 42 and he hit a jumper from the wolf head, right? I mean, that was like Steph Curry territory. So I would think that is the difference. Jalen's a better scorer. Greg's a better shooter. Those are two distinctly different areas.
I'm once again, Ed, I'm not the X's and O guys when it comes to basketball, but once he said score, and George, you were about to say shooter, I was like, I can definitely I could definitely see that those are two different things. And again, in both seasons at UNM, he started 58 of 59 games played, and he averaged 14.7 points and 3.7 assists, over just under 4 assists a game. And then, the Albuquerque High led them to a 1990 state title. George, you are welcome to answer this question or not. I'm going to go to Ronnie Chavez on this one. Do you have any ideas how you would like to see UNM maybe recognize some of the older living and past players? I don't, there are a few guys that we've talked to that might feel like that should be the case. I don't know how you feel. If you don't want to answer that question, that's by all means. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Or do you have any ideas on that, if UNM should do a better job honoring the older players?
I would love to answer that question. And Ronnie, thank you for the question. That is a great question. I'm actually going to approach UNM once school starts back up about recognizing some of the fallen players. I'm on the UNM Alumni Letterman Board, and we meet once a month to discuss UNM and basketball matters. And it's been such a horrific year for former Lobo basketball players. I'm going to approach our athletic director, Eddie Nunez, about maybe doing something at halftime of one of the Lobo basketball games, because this has been a terrible year for Lobo basketball players. I mean, we have guys dropping like flies, and it's horrible. And with me being my age, I'm 61 years old. I'm thinking, damn, am I next? So I'm just hoping the university will maybe do, I don't know, a moment of silence or something at one of our upcoming home basketball games, because we've lost a lot of guys this year.
I'm going to do you one better there. I think with what Greg Brown probably meant, I shouldn't say probably, what Greg Brown meant to that program, what Ruben Douglas meant to that program, what Drew Gordon meant to that program, I think they should probably take a halftime for each player to recognize them. I mean, those are 3 stellar players. And as you said, probably the best UNM men's basketball player of all time. I think that they should probably take at least 3 games to, each individually to remember them. But I'm happy to hear that. I'm sure, Ed, you are happy to hear that. And it's kind of crazy. Like when you hear that, it's like celebrity coming through. You had Willie Mays, you had Donald Sutherland, and I was like, that kind of scared me with the Lobo players, because it was Ruben Douglas, then Drew Gordon, and then sadly Greg Brown. That's just very, very, I'm not superstitious, but it's very, very eerie to me.
I agree.
Yeah. And I'm going to try to lighten up the mood here a little bit. I'm going to go back to Ronnie Chavez, and George, I'll let you start with this question. Who should be the first 5 jerseys retired?
Wow.
I put you on the spot. Now I put you on the spot.
Yep, you totally put me on the spot. Okay, just off the top of my head and in no particular order. All right. Marvin Johnson, Mel Daniels, Ira Harge, oh boy, this is tough. Hunter Green, my buddy. Greg Brown.
I'm going to go to you, Ed. I went to him first because he played for the program. So I know that's a tough act to follow.
You can only do 5, right? You can only do 5. And
yeah,
apologies, and George is hesitant because he knows a lot of these guys. So do I. It's almost like when I mentioned, if you say that somebody said this to me, that Greg was the greatest Albuquerque High Bulldog, I'm not going to say who said it, but because, there's a lot of great Bulldog guys, right? And if you say one guy's the greatest, everybody's going to say, what about me? What about him? Harge, Daniels, Kenny, Coop, and I'd say probably Greg. And, again, all apologies to Phil Smith, Marvin Johnson. That's my 5. That's my 5.
I
and
completely
others
agree.
that I missed. Yeah, because there'll be
And
some.
if you and if you guys ask me that same question tomorrow, I might give you 5 different players.
Uh, I would imagine, Ed, you both want to hear mine as the younger gentleman in this
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
conversation. I would have to. I know it's Mel Daniels, and everything I've heard about Greg Brown. And again, I don't know how it slipped through the cracks, but I'd go with Greg Brown. So there's 2. I have to go with Kenny Thomas. And probably because I saw him play, I thought he was incredibly impactful, was Kendall Williams. And then I would go Luke Longley. I think just because of what Luke probably did professionally, I know it's more probably who would be here, what they did during their playing time at UNM. But I think you just can't take away from, I would imagine anybody would be jealous. I didn't even play basketball, and I'm jealous of Luke Longley, what he accomplished professionally with the Chicago Bulls. Greg, I want to ask you this. Excuse me, George, I want to ask you this. We had you on, I believe, during the basketball season. Yeah, didn't mention. There we go. Nobody mentioned Danny Granger. George, I want to ask you this. I think we had you on towards the end of the year, calendar year, and then had you on early on the Lobo Legend series that we did as a podcast. But kind of how the UNM men's basketball season, I know it's a little bit of old news now, but how kind of it was a roller coaster, and it turned into a saving grace in 4 days in Las Vegas, and then the NCAA tournament game was kind of lackluster. But what did you make of this season, and I think what Richard Pitino has done? Because I think a lot of Lobo fans, just UNM alumni and those that support in the community, they have used the word renaissance. That's not my word. But how, and I know, I think Ed had mentioned you are Lobo through and through. You have season tickets to football. You have season tickets to basketball. But your thoughts on the renaissance that has been UNM basketball this year, your thoughts on the 2023-2024 season?
Well, I'm actually okay with the word renaissance, because think back to the program that Coach Pitino inherited. We were smoldering ashes, right? We were terrible. We were horrible. I remember his first year, you couldn't give away Lobo basketball tickets, right? Couldn't give them away. But he built it up, and this year was great. It was kind of a disappointment at the end. We lost those home games to UNLV, and we lost to Air Force, but we caught lightning in a bottle in Las Vegas, and I was out there, and OMG, that was a party. It was a blast once the Lobo fans took over the Thomas and Mack Arena yet again. The last time we did that was when Stevie Wonder was our coach. That's what I call Steve Alford. I call him Stevie Wonder, but it brought back memories of back when Alfred was coaching, when the Lobo fans took over the arena, and we went out there and kicked butt. And we did the same thing this year. Went out there and kicked butt with half of Albuquerque in attendance. It was great. Now, we kind of crashed and burned in the NCAA tournament, but it's like I told people afterwards, we wouldn't have beat Clemson in the pit, on the moon, or underwater. They were just a better team than we were. There is no way in hell we were going to beat Clemson. So that just was not happening. But going forward, I think the program is in great shape. I went to the opening preseason basketball practice a couple weeks ago, and we've got some great recruits. The biggest thing I noticed is our length. Jalen and Jamal were slight of build, right? But now we've got guys playing guard and playing wing that are 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We have a big team. I think we got like 4 guys, maybe 5, that are 6'9" or taller. So we have a huge team now. So I really think that's going to help going forward when we play the San Diego States and the Utah States. So again, I think we're in a really good position going forward because we physically have a big team.
Ed, do you have anything? I was gonna kind of answered what I was gonna ask moving forward. Do you have anything about the current state of Lobo basketball for Mr. George Scott?
Well, George, I got to see you in practice as well, and I concur with what you said. I think the freshman Milicic, how do you say his name, Ryan?
Milicevic.
Milicevic. That kid has got some legs, some tree trunks, man. Before the other kid from Arizona, what's his name, Ryan? I want to make sure I pronounce it right. Borovichinin. He's another one. I was impressed with what I saw. We saw them practice, and I thought they really got after it. There was a lot of competition, a lot of great drills. And George, I think you make a point there in the backcourt. You're right. Clemson was a better team. They were taller. They were bigger. And Coach Pitino said this after the season. Our goal is to get longer, to get more athletic, to get taller. He's done that. So how it fits together on the court, we'll see that. But what I saw in practice, I was very encouraged. So I concur with a lot of what you said for sure.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is just kind of piggybacking on my previous point is just keeping all those guys happy because we're in this NIL transfer portal train wreck as far as I'm concerned. And the problem is, can you keep everybody happy? Coach Pitino told me last year that he's had to adjust the way he coaches because you can't yell at kids anymore. You can't yell at them anymore because if you hurt their feelings, they'll transfer out the next day. It's just ridiculous, but that's a whole nother topic for another day.
No, I appreciate that answer. That's we might have to have you come on again and talk NIL. We're going to take another quick commercial break. Mr. Scott, you're welcome to bring us back or welcome to join back. I'm going to bring in our in-house resident that knows everything about any college basketball player, MLB prospect. Jacob Neff wanted his thoughts on the expansion of the NCAA tournament, if that's possible. If you want to join us, you're more than welcome to stick around after the commercial break.
I'll stick around.
Sounds good. All right. We'll take another quick commercial break. My name is Ryan Tamori. This is Pit Press Live. Ed Nunez, former UNM basketball player George Scott, and then Jacob Neff will join us. If I can find how to get it to commercials. There we go. We'll be right back.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
All right, welcome back to the Pit Press Live, and I want to appreciate Jacob Neff waiting for like 20 minutes, so I'm sorry about that, man. Joined by the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs and a Lobo fan since 1970, Mr. Ed Nunez, former UNM men's basketball player George Scott, and you can find him on Twitter or X. I was going to make a bad joke there, but I won't. At NM Sports Capper, Mr. Jacob Neff. Jake, man, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks, Ryan, for having me on. George, one of my dads. I hope you don't take this wrong because the age difference. I know Ed always gives us hell for it, but one of my dad's favorite Lobos of all time. He didn't go to UNM. He was actually a baseball player at Arizona, but grew up here. It's an honor to meet you and be on the show with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Jake, very quickly, your top 5 Lobos of all time.
Oh, all right. I think I gotta go Luke Longley. And this is no particular order. Danny Granger. I gotta go with probably Cooper, Greg Brown, Mel Gibson. Or Jesus.
Mel Gibson?
My God. Holy cow. Why did I say Mel Gibson?
Mel
and
Lethal
Mel
Weapon.
Daniels. Mel Daniels.
Lethal Weapon?
Yeah,
man,
Lethal
you got-
Weapon.
you got
Maybe
Thunder.
he was a lethal weapon, but it wasn't that one. Yeah, I don't know why I said that, but yes, Mel Daniels.
Well, welcome to Thunderdome, bitch.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know how I transitioned from that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for you guys, especially George Scott, John Romero, who always chimes in. He is a big, I think he's an NMSU alumni. 5 greatest Aggies: Sam Lacey, John Williamson, Jimmy Collins, Pascal Siakam, and Slab Jones. And Pascal Siakam got a max NBA deal from the Pacers today or yesterday. I saw that news. So congratulations to him. And we know we said, Mark Cineros. Yeah, we know he said Mel Gibson. Every time I see Mel Gibson, I think of South Park when they made fun of him. Damn it, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, we'll just get into it. Fantastic live show hosting. Yahoo Sports is reporting that the NCAA has presented to expand the men's basketball model that could grow the tournament from 72 to 60. Can't even talk either. 76 teams. According to Yahoo Sports, the presented changes would keep the core 64-team bracket intact, adding additional playing games and at least one more first 4 site expansions of the women's tournament could follow suit. As you know, the NCAA tournament field expanded from 65 to 68 in 2011, from 64 to 65 in 2001. And the alteration to the event's core bracket came in 1985 when it went from 53 teams to 64 teams. I have this sound clip for the NCAA committee.
Are you dumb?
Because I love the way the tournament is. I used to think, and I say it on this show all the time, I feel like Super Bowl Sunday used to be the holiest of holy days. It has now become the first 2 days or the first 4 days of the tournament. For me, I enjoy it. I appreciate it much more. I love the way the first 4 are on Tuesday and Wednesday night. I think it's a little bit of a taste, especially if you're the Mountain West, you get in there and you lose or you get snubbed with your matchup. I don't want it to change. And I'm going to throw it to Mr. Scott because you kind of referenced how NIL has kind of changed the scenery. I don't think that they should change the tournament, and I wanted your thoughts and your opinion right off the bat, and then I'll throw it to Jacob.
Well, I respectfully disagree, and I'll tell you why. There are billions and billions and billions of dollars at stake. Why not make it all inclusive? Open it up for everybody. Let all these kids get a taste of the NCAA tournament. I personally never played in the NCAA tournament. We made it to the NIT my senior year, and I still have my NIT watch in my drawer. But that's one of the big regrets of my college career is not playing in the big dance. So again, with all the money out there, why not open it up so all these kids can get a taste of the big dance because they will never, ever forget that.
According to the ESPN report on it, Cameron Soleno wrote tournament expansion could help compensate for that without scraping auto bids for smaller leagues. As we all know, UNM would have probably been left out had they not won the Mountain West Conference tournament. Jacob, as our resident college basketball expert, I wanted your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did we lose him there?
Yeah.
He's muted. I don't know. It sounds like he's muted.
Can you guys not hear me?
No, now we
go.
can.
No.
There
Okay.
we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I was saying, for me, I think it's leave it the same. That's just my opinion. Here's why. I feel like people here, and this is just from the outlook of Albuquerque and some of the smaller schools, the mid-majors, they think that this is going to help the cause of people like us, and I think that it does the total opposite. I think it would frustrate people even more because what you're going to have is them giving the bigger schools, the bigger Power 4 conferences, more teams into the tournament. And at that point, I feel like you start getting convoluted with, 20 and 13 Power 4 schools that don't deserve to make the tournament. And that's just my opinion on it. I think all the money will go to those programs because they'll be the ones going into the tournament. And that's just at the current proposal. Now, like George was saying, if you open it up even more than that, then that's a different story because you have to start including some of these mid-majors into it. If you look at, the potential of who was left out of the tournament last year, and this is not, we're not even talking about the Lobos. I think Indiana State would have still barely made the tournament with this new proposal. And they were a 28-4 basketball team. I think we're going to be at that point where we're going to just keep feeding the bigger schools more money to pull away people with the NIL the way that it is currently. You make these NCAA tournament appearances, you get more money into those programs. And unfortunately that could potentially do the opposite of, people like us in our mid-major world where, we're losing players constantly left and right because of the amount that we're unable to pay them. So that's my 2 cents on it. If they're going to expand it by 8 teams, and then we're just going to get a bunch of play-in games just to get into the tournament, I'm just not a big fan. That's my opinion.
Ed, I'm throwing the ball in your court.
I think what George said, that's been proposed before. George, you've heard that where they said, let's open it up for every team. That's been proposed. But I think here's the key. And Jacob, I understand what you're saying. And you too, Ryan. It was pure. At one time, it was 32 teams. It was 48-64. When it comes to money and NIL, when those things are being talked about, it's going to be done. That's just what I think. Now, the same thing with the NFL, right? They expanded they expanded to 17. They're talking about 18. What's involved there? Revenue, more money. Someone's got to pay the bills, the light bill here with this NIL stuff. I'm already seeing colleges putting off adding wrestling rooms and things that they had planned to do and that were budgeted for because the NIL. So I think when but I think the 64, the March Madness, does that convolute things? Does it water it down a little? I don't know. But because George, I'd seen that years ago. Somebody had proposed that, right? Let's open it up for everybody. I'd seen that proposed more than once. So I think you're probably going to see it when it comes to money and revenue and NIL money needed. It's probably going to happen more than it's not. And those revenue and money, this NIL thing. George, you said it yourself. Out of control. What did you call it? Out of control monster. That's what you called it. So
a train wreck.
Yeah, train wreck. So I just think it's going to happen. For the reasons that I mentioned, I'd be very surprised if it didn't.
I don't know. I just feel like, okay, now think about this. Why not give as many kids as possible the opportunity to experience March Madness? Let's be honest. UConn would have won it this year regardless of how many teams they let in the tournament. UConn's going to probably win it next year, right? Because they retained their coach. So if they let 8 more teams in, is anything going to change as far as UConn winning it again next year? Probably not. Why not let more kids experience that tournament? Now, maybe I'm showing my age or whatever, but I'm just thinking, let's just let all these kids experience it, because I really think the cream is going to rise to the top eventually. And once you get to the Final Four, you're going to have the best 4 teams, period.
I'll tell you what it does for Jacob and I. It's a more opportunity to more lose money on college basketball games. I'm going to go to my co-owner or business partner in this, because Eric, you set yourself up for my flaming rant. They're also considering a site in the West to host another First Four regional, the Pit, a possible venue. No, the Pit, the NCAA is not coming here, and it's the renovations. There's a requirement for it. I'm paraphrasing it. My understanding, there is a requirement for each site what they need to have, and the Pit, I know, does not fit it, and it's very sad, because I saw a Elite Eight game there, a West, or where they called it by city. It was the Albuquerque Regional in 2005. What's it? Kevin Pittsnoggle, Richard Pitino in Louisville, Francisco Garcia.
West Virginia.
West Virginia. Yeah, West Virginia and Louisville. West Virginia came out and hit like 15 of 16 threes in the first half, and Louisville found themselves winning the game in overtime.
Yeah.
I've been to 2 elite games, and of all places, Madison Square Garden and the Pit. And the Pit, Madison Square Garden didn't have Pit on the Pit. It was a much better atmosphere. Now, the cool thing about Madison Square Garden is you had South Carolina play Florida with what I saw, and you have a lot of those alumni that live in the New York City area, the tri-state area. And so it was a lot of, it wasn't even full, but there were a lot of alumni in that venue. As much as New York City is a basketball haven, it just seemed like, I don't know, it was a little it wasn't what the Pit was, though. You felt like a college game to me.
I know one of the requirements is also an overhead scoreboard. So if that was the case, they would have to demolish the Pit, because that roof could never hold a overhead scoreboard. So it would literally take, I think, the flavor and the the atmosphere out of the Pit if we had to change to that type of environment to get those types of games, which I just don't see happening.
Eric, that's what prevents the NCAA from coming to Albuquerque. They have requirements. It's additional space for press and cameras. You can't do that around the court, because it's just a court. That's why they go to that's why they go to bigger city arenas, because you're playing in arenas that have hockey teams. I mean, UNM lost it. I think at the time it was the HP Pavilion or the SAP Center in San Jose. That's where the Sharks play. That's not technically an NBA arena. It's an NHL arena. Seton Hall does play at the Prudential Center. The Prudential Center was built for events, and it's the home. It's an NHL arena. It's for the New Jersey Devils. So it's sideline, and I didn't realize it was the overhead scoreboard. I knew that it was a lot of press accommodations. And I was at the Daily Lobo when the NCAA tournament, women's tournament, came here for the first and second round, and it was a great setup. The Rudy Davilo Center was the media workroom and for like press, and for post-game press conferences. But I think you had to walk up the ramp, or you had to walk a different way. And I know that I sound like I'm this is first world problems and a press problem, but that was it. So I think that deteriorated a lot of it. I mean, it's kind of crazy. There was the Super Bowl in Jacksonville in 2005. The press was up in arms because there weren't enough hotels. It didn't accommodate the event itself because of, and this is even 20 years ago, for what the event had become. So that's my piece on that, but I didn't know that, Jacob. I think I probably knew that. I didn't remember it. We have talked plenty of Lobo basketball. We've talked plenty of college basketball. And again, while I've got and I did clip the soundbite, Jacob. Hey, the NBA finals are over.
Oh, thank God.
So thank you. There's my major league reference, Ed. I wanted to ask before we get to the NBA finals, I will, and then I'll ask George, but I wanted to go to Rick's not here. So I'm going to go to the resident Laker fan today. The Laker fan is what, 72. JJ Redick has been announced the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, which is, you're already shaking your head and scratching your eyebrow. I like JJ Redick. I mean, when you really look at it, at least up until probably Monday night, he was the most successful Duke graduate in the NBA. I think had Grant Hill not been injured, he probably is the most successful Duke player. Now you got Jason Tatum. But Ed, I wanted your thoughts on JJ Redick being hired as the new head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, where there are no lakes.
Well, they've been talking about it for weeks, and Dan Hurley, that was a smoke screen. That was never going to happen. That's a circus. It's very disappointing. Even when he went there, for a visit, I told my wife he's not coming. There's no way. They lowballed him at $11 million, and it sounds low, but then California taxes eat up how much of that. So he was never going to come. Monty Williams got fired, by Detroit, and when he got fired, I had a little bit of a glimpse of hope because I'd rather have Monty Williams than JJ Redick. Look, and it's not because I don't like him personally. He's got no coaching experience. And to me, he does a podcast with LeBron. It's the continued Bronification of the Lakers. Now, LeBron has said, he came out and told Rich Paul from Clutch, his agent said it doesn't mean that LeBron's going to automatically sign with the Lakers if JJ Redick is hired or Bronny is drafted, which I say bull. I say bull to that because I just think it's more attention being drawn, like waiting the suspense, and then at the last minute he'll sign with the Lakers. And one of my friends doesn't think they'll draft Bronny. And I know Jeannie Buss wants to see it as a marketing ploy of the brand. Who's the brand? LeBron's the brand. We got to sell tickets with him as long as we can. If he's not there, are they going to sell as many tickets with Anthony Davis? Probably not. As a Laker fan that's been a Laker fan since '72, I think LeBron James is a great player. But I'm not very happy with the hiring of JJ Redick. I'm not. I just thought there was more experienced coaches that they could have hired. Supposedly, I just read now he might bring in Sam Cassell or Rajon Rondo as assistants, which wouldn't be bad. I think those guys would be good assistants to him. I just don't see him being better than Darvin Ham. People were down on Darvin Ham. Darvin Ham got them to the Western Conference semifinals or Western Conference finals last year. So someone who's a Laker fan since '72, someone compared JJ Redick to a young Pat Riley. Pat Riley took over in '82. He had Magic, he had Cooper, he had Kareem, he had Jamal Wilkes, he had Norm Nixon, he had Bob McAdoo. That's a pretty good lineup to win some games when you first come in. So that's my take on it. Somebody even mentioned the Lakers have turned into the Clippers. That really pierced my heart. But the Lakers have won 17 championships and the Clippers have not won 0. So I won't go that far. But I'm not very happy. Yeah, I
wish Rick was here to call the Clippers show about Donald Sterling losing time. I was talking about how young I was during the Greg Brown era. Again, I know where I was in South River, New Jersey. John Starks going 2-19, Game 7, 1994 NBA Finals. George, I don't know if you watch much NBA. Again, I'm going to throw this to you if you pay attention to it. I would imagine as a basketball guy, yes, you do. But boy, I got really radio voicey there. But your thoughts on, I don't even know if you're a Lakers fan, but your thoughts on JJ Redick to the Lakers.
I don't watch a whole lot of NBA basketball. I typically tune in during the playoffs, kind of like the way I do with Major League Baseball. I start watching during the playoffs. But I would tend to agree with Ed. I just wonder, what can JJ Redick possibly say to LeBron James in a timeout with a tie score, 2 minutes left, that LeBron doesn't already know? And how much better can he be than Darvin Ham? I completely agree with Ed there. I just think it was a desperate hire. I don't understand why they didn't hire someone with more experience, a proven winner. Maybe there's not a lot of those guys available. I know there's a lot of retreads out there, but my goodness, he's never coached an NBA game in his life. How is LeBron going to respect him? And make no mistake about it, this is LeBron's team. You know LeBron is going to be calling the shots in the huddle, in the locker room, in the draft day war room. So I'm just not feeling
it. Jacob, your thoughts? I know we're not the biggest NBA guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're coming around to real basketball season, which is college basketball. But if I was a Lakers fan and I was looking for a coach, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Cavs just released JB Bickerstaff. I think I probably would have been calling up JB Bickerstaff. He, and I don't watch too much NBA, but I do know, enough about it. But I mean, he took the Cavs, from pretty much and I know that, signing Donovan Mitchell was a big aspect of that, but he grew Darius Garland into a really good point guard. And if I look at what they had outside of, and he also did a good job with, I know that he doesn't draft the players, but I'm sure he has a little bit of a say. Mobley, he took Jared Allen into a decent big man. He has some pretty good, accolades on developing some players. I probably would have reached out to somebody with a little more experience. As Ed and George just said, this has to be clearly to appease LeBron James for as long as he's going to be there. I just don't see it as, you look at the Lakers and you think of the Lakers in basketball, you just don't see or feel like JJ Redick is the hire to make in that job. And nothing against him. Hey, maybe he ends up being a great head coach. I just don't see that being, your first coaching gig. And it's going to come with a lot of scrutiny and, a lot of pressure. So we'll see how he handles that. But my choice would have been JB Bickerstaff if I was hiring for the Lakers.
James Borrego is now being, I said almost James Barone there, Ed. James Borrego is being now linked to the Detroit Pistons. I think we all wish we were Monty Williams. You got paid. He's getting paid, I think 26 or 27 million to not coach the Suns. And he's getting paid $65 million to not coach the Detroit Pistons. So that's a nice bank account. And then very quickly, and George, I'll start with you. I know you mentioned you started watching during the postseason. A lot of people out there think, Boston kind of had a cakewalk. I've always been the kind of fan that says play the hand you're dealt. I think at least the New York Knickerbockers would have gotten a game or two from them in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I speak to this as a Knicks fan. I'm like the only son of a bitch that likes Jason Tatum. I think his game's good. I know people think he's like corny. I've enjoyed him because at least he started to push LeBron and with the Cavs kind of at the brink there. Wish he would have beaten the Warriors 2 years ago. But I like Jaylen Brown. I like Brad Stevens. It's very, very funny for me to say that as a Knicks fan. I really like the Celtics. I did not understand this Mavs team. We talked about it. I'm repeating myself. I think Jason Kidd might have done a very, very good coaching job, but as I've gotten older, I've gotten fatter, and I felt like I look like Luka Doncic's, body build. But just your thoughts on the Celtics. And we have to have George on more. I make him laugh. I just wanted your thoughts on the Celtics run, and was this kind of a bad brand of basketball the last 2 months?
No, I think that Boston was the best team. If they played the tournament next month, I think Boston would win again. They are the best team, period. I know the Knicks had some injury problems, but even if the Knicks were healthy, I don't think it would have mattered. Boston is the best
No,
team
totally
in the
agree.
league this season. Now, that may change next year, but Boston was the cream of the crop this season.
Ed, I'm going to go to you.
You know, as a Laker fan, it's funny because they were going to win. I hate them. I'm a Laker fan, hates Boston. My wife's watching the celebration. I'm like, honey, turn that off. Turn it off. I don't want to watch that, And the next day, it was a ESPN whiteout. I don't watch when, Dallas loses, the Cowboys lose. I don't watch highlights. I didn't watch the ESPN the next day, period. So, but George knows. George is a basketball guy. I'm a basketball guy. They are the best team. They were. They spread the floor. Tatum and Brown were excellent. Drew Holiday, Derek White, Sam Hauser got some 3-point shots in there. Al Horford, the solid veteran. They were the best. And what pains me even worse is they look like they could win 2 or 3 more, while the Lakers look like they're miles away from contending. So that pains me even more. But George, you're absolutely right. And no matter who you put in front of them, they were going to win. They were the best team in the league this year. And I was hoping along the way, Milwaukee, they got knocked out. Someone would knock them off. And they play the games for a reason. They proved they're the best team. And that number 18 still sticks in my craw. The Lakers still should have won in '84. That still makes me mad. So, yeah, I'm a bad sport. I admit it. But give them credit. I'll give credit where it's due and give the Celtics credit. They were the best team this year.
I have to backtrack before I go to Jacob again. I said, I think had the Knicks been healthy, they might have stolen a game from them. They weren't beating them. I look at it objectively. I think they're great. I like Jason Tatum, and the entire internet thinks he's corny as hell. And I'm like, I think he's a fine player. I think when he gets double teamed, I think he got, I didn't play the game. I'm not the X's and O's guys. I think he gets double teamed, and I think that allows Jaylen Brown to show his how he's a superstar. And they built, I'm still in everything that I heard on Tuesday. Give Brad Stevens a lot of credit. I think Joe Mazzulla is a very good credit coach. I think they picked the pieces. And I think that Derek White trade 2 years ago, man, it's just completely, he is you go into this role playing position and he's a big contributor. And Sam Hauser came in and kind of got hot. I'm definitely going to lose people with this joke, but Arnold Schwarzenegger plays a character Hauser in his 1990 movie Total Recall. So I'm a big Sam Hauser guy just because of that stupid movie. But Jacob, I'm going to do it again. We were joking about it last night. Hey, the NBA finals are over.
Oh, thank God.
Yes.
Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I heard you say that George stole your thunder earlier. You just stole mine. I was going to say Brad Stevens, man. That guy had a rough tenure there as the head coach. He was forced out, and then they hired him on as the GM, and he really put together that team. If you go back and look at some of those trades and acquisitions that he's made, he pieced together that team great. They didn't give up on Joe Mazzulla after last year. And I think they've got a solid core. I mean, you look at that team. Porzingis was hurt and really didn't even play. I think what was it, like almost 2.5 weeks before the NBA Finals. Showed up to Game 1. He was on fire. I think he was. He obviously didn't keep up that pace, but I mean, he still played really well, and he could have played even better. You know what I mean? If you think about that from that perspective, he came into that series limping, and they blew him out of the water. I mean, let's just be my favorite player in the NBA is Luka Doncic. I think that guy's amazing. You joke about his body type and all that kind of stuff. I think that for as unathletic as he looks on the basketball court, that guy is something else. But there was also a lot of motivation behind this one with Kyrie coming back to Boston too. They obviously didn't have the greatest tenure there, and the better team won. Let's just put it how it was. You know what I mean? The Mavericks. I got to give them credit too. I mean, they put together a lot of guys on that team to get them where they were this year. a lot of those guys were, not even role players for some of their teams before this. So, yeah, I'm happy the NBA is over. I know Ed loves the NBA and stuff. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I can't stand watching 140 to 130 every night and people not playing defense until the final 5 minutes of the game. That's just not me. Yeah, let's turn the page, and I can't wait for some college basketball now.
Amen. Or college football.
College football too, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big college basketball guy, but I do love college football. And Ed and I have been suffering with the Dallas Cowboys now for quite some time, and I don't think it's gonna get any better this year. So I guess maybe I'm just looking ahead to a season where I can actually enjoy it, which is Lobo basketball, because I'm not sure how the football team is going to do this year, and I'm not sure how the Dallas Cowboys are going to do this year. So maybe I'm just getting ahead of myself, George.
That's and I'm not trying to keep George that much longer, but that segues into my next topic, and we'll make it quick. But Ed, I wanted to go to some comments, and I'm going to go to John Romero here twice. Chick Hearn. Oh, whoa, we're going to start here. There are approximately 451 D1 B-ball teams. That must be that NMSU degree hard at work, because there are 362 teams in D1. Ed, I figured you appreciate that. And George. Back to John Romero. Chick Hearn rolling in his grave with JJ Redick coaching announcements. I wanted your thoughts on that.
That's funny, because Chick Hearn, man, for years, the voice of the Lakers, they said even when they gave him a color guy, he didn't want any color guy, period. Didn't want one. And then he finally got used to working with one. But that's a funny one. Chick Hearn probably is. I know a lot of Laker fans are. So that's a funny one, John. That one really is.
Eric Markham, I agree with Ed. The pro, bad hire. The guy had never coached. Ronnie Chavez, Sam Cassell would have been better. I like Sam Cassell, man. I think he's been a part of a couple of championships as assistant head coach. Just one, with the Celtics. And Eric Markham again. Ryan, you always make me laugh too, bro. I'm glad to do that. Ask T-Mac ABQ on Twitter and GWade049 or whatever the hell his name is. The Jimmy H, the 80s were the best, and the NBA died in the mid 90s. Again, being a painful as a Knicks fan, I still love Michael Jordan and those teams. Before we get out of here, Ed had mentioned this to me about you, George, and if I'm wrong, then maybe I'm making it up. He mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, that you are a Lobo season ticket holder for not only men's basketball, for football. You're a Lobo through and through, and it makes it's music to my ears. College football is my jam. And Ed, I'm telling the joke again. I get the love of sports mostly from my mom. My mom loves college football. My mom thought she was giving birth to an offensive lineman that was going to a Big Ten school. I slid on out, and I was the skinniest thing, and I was 5'7". 20 years ago, I was 5'7" and soaking wet, 140 pounds. So I was not going to play offensive line. But George, I wanted your thoughts on the transition with Bronco Mendenhall, your thoughts as a big Lobo supporter, and maybe what he can do to get this thing jump-started. I think that, we've talked about it. The schedule is brutal this year, but maybe just your thoughts, maybe your excitement with Bronco Mendenhall being hired, and your love and support of Lobo football.
Well, first of all, I'm a huge football fan. I tell people this all the time, and not a lot of people believe me, but I may be a bigger football fan than I am a basketball fan now, believe it or not. I have season tickets to the Lobo football team. In fact, I just upgraded my tickets to the press box, kind of tired of sitting out in the elements, in that September heat, in that November cold. Now, regarding Bronco, wow, that was a home run. I am still shocked that we landed him, because he had his pick of multiple schools. And that was just a tremendous hire of him by Eddie Nunez. I'm really looking forward to this year. Trying to temper my expectations. I don't think we're going to win the conference this year. It's not going to happen. But I do see some incremental improvement over last season's team coached by Coach Danny Gonzalez. But I think, 2-3 years down the road, I think we're going to be battling San Diego State, Boise State, Utah State for the conference championship. And I am just so glad that we got him. I still cannot believe we landed him here. That was a huge hire. Just, again, hit it out of the park hire. I don't know how the hell we pulled it off, but I am so glad we did. And I'm just happy and looking forward to just watching him work his magic over the coming years. Because, again, it's not going to happen this year. It's going to be a 2 or 3 year project.
Have you had the chance to meet him?
I went to the opening press conference. I kind of fast talked and sidestepped my way into there. As a former basketball player, I had no business being there, but I was able to get inside because I wanted to see firsthand. And to answer your question, no, I did not get a chance to meet him. My goodness, there were a lot of people waiting to meet him and shake his hand, and I just kind of stood back. So I figured I'll get to meet him eventually. I'm very active on campus, so I will meet him at some point, but not yet.
I appreciate those answers. Thank you very much. Just some quick hits before we get out of here. Per KRQE, our friends Van Tate, Van the Man, and Jared Chester, Chet Stedman. A total of 8 players are currently on campus for the UNM women's basketball team. 6 of them are new to the program. The players that are currently in Albuquerque include returning player Vinay Cumber, Paris Laro, Anaya Moreland, Reza Poe, Alyssa Hargrove, Drew Jordan, Lydia Mwambe, and Clarissa Craig. It's the second consecutive year that head coach Mike Bradbury has reconstructed the roster in the offseason. Again, this is a team that finished in second place last year. Bradbury told KRQE, quote, "I mean, it's an exciting way, and it's also in a frustrating way. You wish it wasn't like that, but unfortunately, it's probably going to be like that more times than not. We had a good group, big, long, and athletic. And again, Albuquerque native Vienna Cumber is Lobo's only returner that has seen significant minutes in Cherry and Silver. She said it was important to show her loyalty to the hometown Lobos for her senior season and is excited to be a leader of this team in the upcoming season." Ed, I'll throw that to you. We've been talking about it, and I need to make a move on talking more women's hoops on here. Of course, I'm very, very acquainted with JJ Buck, who's the voice of the women's UNM team. You can also catch him on the opening drive on 95.9 FM, 6:10 a.m., the opening drive on the Sports Animal. I don't know. When you hear that, Ed, you cover high school sports. At least she showed some loyalty, and she's staying here.
It's hard to believe she's the only one. Again, they remade their whole roster. Nine of players entered the transfer portal, and he's got a whole new roster. He did have success doing that last year. One of his players interested me, and Nia Ogman, opted not to play her senior year and is going to be an assistant at Albuquerque Academy with the new coach, Josh Skarsgård. And she's only 21 years old. That surprised me because when you're that young, you still want to play and run, but she's not even going to play. She's going to be coaching. So, there was some, I'm not going to lie, what I read and heard, there were some grumblings about some of the girls that had left. They weren't happy. When you have that kind of player turnover, somebody's not happy with what's going on. But I got to say, Coach Bradbury did it last year and had success. Some of his players, I believe, are still playing international ball with they couldn't make it down for practice. So they'll be down here a little later in the summer. But anxious to see. Some of these players came highly regarded that I read about. So I'm kind of anxious to see how he turns this roster over because he's going to have another challenge in front of him. There's no doubt about it.
One of the newcomers that has been highly touted is University of Cincinnati transfer forward center Clarissa Craig. She gives UNM a presence in the paint. George, my last question to you. Do you pay any attention to the women's Lobo team? And, I probably went to more women's game under Don Flanagan about 20 years ago, and especially on their Sweet 16 run, than I had gone to UNM men's games until I started working at the UNM student newspaper. But just any thoughts on the transition with the UNM women's basketball team?
I honestly do not follow them a lot. I follow them a little bit this year because Rob Robbins' daughter, Hannah, played for UNM. So that kind of piqued my interest. But she transferred out, as you guys know. So honestly, I don't follow them a lot.
No, I appreciate that. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Lastly, Habtom Samuel, the national championship in the 10,000 meter relay in the NCAA. He was named, along with Colorado State's Gabby Morris, the 2024 Mountain West Men's and Women's Outdoor Track and Field Student Athlete of the Year, is voted on by the league's head coaches. So great news out of there. Maybe we can get him on, Ed. Talk to him. That'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. George Scott, a former UNM men's basketball player, played 82, 83, 84, 85. We got a great picture. You driving the lane and going up against Patrick Ewing. I love that picture here in the pit. I want to thank you for your time and being very candid. I didn't think I'd expect you to keep on for about 90 minutes, so I'm sorry for that. But I know that you write into Sports Speak Up at the Journal, and I really like what you have to say. So again, you're welcome on any time, but I just want to let you know I appreciate you joining us tonight. I know it was a little bit under the a somber mood with Greg and Ruben Douglas and Drew Gordon with Lobos, that former UNM basketball players that have passed. But I really want to thank you for your time tonight. I didn't expect that.
Well, thank you for having me. As luck would have it, I was free tonight, so I enjoyed it, and I will be glad to join you guys anytime. Just give me a little notice, and I'm a big sports guy, and let's do it again soon.
I really appreciate it. We're going to have to definitely have you on more sooner rather than later, and a lot more often. He is the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs, a Lobo fan since 1970. I was watching that movie last night. 1970. I didn't do that on purpose. Damn it. A Lobo fan since 1970. And I don't know, maybe your Lakers will figure it out. Again, it's an oddity for me. It's an oddity for me when the Knicks win on my birthday and not the Mets. So we'll figure that out. But Ed, as always, I appreciate it. And I appreciate reaching out to George and having him come on and talk about all the various topics he did tonight.
No, George is a great guy, so I appreciate him joining us, and always good to be on with you guys, Ryan.
And Jake, dude, I really appreciate you joining us last second tonight. You can follow him on Twitter at NM Sports Capper. His name is Jacob Neff. Thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thanks for having me on. Nice meeting you, George. Love to have the conversations again. Ed, as always, we'll see each other next episode, I'm sure.
You bet, Jake. You bet, man. Good to have you back on.
Yep. And before I go, I always want to thank the listeners. Jimmy H, we appreciate you. I know you're one of the regulars. Great show. Much appreciated. Before I go, again, follow us on the old X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. Every time I say that, I think of the Prince symbol. I don't know what I get. That's where I stole from. All right. Follow us on X, formerly Twitter at the Pit Press NM. Follow us on Instagram at the Pit Press NM. I need to do more work on our website. Our website looks great. I need to write as I'm a talking head I can see myself, my head. Anyway, check out our website at the Pit Press NM and mailbag. We got one email in and we kind of changed things up this week. I need to read it. Feel free to email us at the Pit Press NM at gmail.com. We will be back next Tuesday. And I forgot to mention, we are going to be at Mountain West Conference Football Media Days, July 10th and 11th at Circa Resort and Casino in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. We are going to be live from Stadium Swim on July 9th and July 10th. We'll give more news that way. But again, Ed and I will be there for Mountain West Conference Football Media Days. A lot to talk about there. But again, we're going to be live at Circa and Stadium Swim those 2 days. Very excited for that. So we will be back next Tuesday and next Thursday, as always, on YouTube, live on YouTube and X. And hey, Jacob, we're only less than a month away from the return of NCAA college football.
Oh, thank God.
All right, everybody have a good night. Appreciate you guys. And we will talk to you next Tuesday. Everybody have a great weekend.